Email router. One of the cool features of CRM is its ability to work with Microsoft Exchange and other SMTP and POP3 email servers to assist us in transferring emails into Microsoft CRM4 and outbound to other people in the world. Now, the email router is an additional software component that provides the interface between Microsoft CRM and your email server or mailbox, and it can monitor selected mailboxes, grab any emails in those mailboxes, and automatically bring them into CRM where they can be tracked. Now, this email router component doesn't have to be installed on either the CRM server or your Exchange server. It can be installed practically anywhere, as long as it's on a computer that's running Windows XP, Vista 2003, or Windows Server 2008. So what we're going to do in this lab is install the email router on our Exchange server, but again, you can install it wherever you like. But do make sure that whatever machine that you decide to install it on is a machine that stays on. So preferably make it a server, since it's likely that if you install it on a user's PC, then that machine will be switched off when the user goes home each night. Now, we've already looked at using Microsoft CRM for Outlook, and that's what a lot of you listening to this video will use. However, where the email router is really useful is when you have a mailbox that you want to be monitored and imported into CRM. For example, you might have a support email form on your website, or possibly a sales form or a billing inquiries form, and when people fill that form in, it's going to send an email to a pre-configured email address within your company. Now from there, your help desk can pick up that email and distribute it to the correct department within your company so they can action it. Well, with the email router, we can monitor mailboxes and automatically grab the email and bring it into CRM for action. Now, we could also automatically take that email and drop it into the correct queue as well, so that technical support queries, for example, get sent to the tech support team and sales queries get sent to the sales team. All right, well, let's see how we can configure the email router. All right, well, I've switched over to my Exchange server, and I've just dropped our CRM CD in the drive, and we're at the familiar splash screen that you've all seen before. So we're going to click on the second link here to install the email router. Now, as with our CRM installation, we can also elect to check for any updates to the installation package before we install it, which of course isn't a bad idea to check for the latest. But in my lab here, we'll choose to skip this step, and then the setup wizard will begin copying the files it needs to our system. All right, well, we'll need to accept the license agreement here and then click on the I accept button. Now, like with the other installation packages we've looked at earlier, we'll need to install a couple of required components in order to install the email router, including our Visual C++ runtime. So we'll click on the install button. And now I'm just going to pause the video here while these things are installing, and we'll be back in a moment. Okay, well, our prerequisites have been installed successfully, so we'll click next. Now we have two choices here. We can install the email router service, and we can install the rule deployment wizard. And in most cases, you'll probably install both of them, since this will give your administrators the ability to deploy rules from any Exchange server that they need to. So I'm going to select both of these, and we'll click next. And then we'll need to enter in the path where we want to install our email router. Now I'm going to accept the default here of Program Files, Microsoft CRM Email, and click next. And then the wizard's going to go off and check that we do in fact meet the requirements needed for the installation. And if everything's good, we'll see a bunch of green ticks here. So we'll click next. And then we're going to leave this box checked here, which will run the configuration manager after the installation of the email router is complete. So we'll click on install. Now, this is a pretty small installation, so it shouldn't take too long, probably around 10-15 seconds or so. So I wouldn't bother going to grab a coffee, as it will be done before you probably even made it to the kitchen. Okay, it's done. We'll click on OK, and since we left that box checked, it'll start up the configuration manager. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to have to do here is to configure an outgoing email profile. This is for email that's coming from CRM and going out somewhere else. So we're going to click on the new button here, and we'll need to give this profile a name. So I'm going to call it outgoing email. Now the direction of this email, of course, is going to be outgoing. So we'll change it there from the drop-down box. We're going to leave the email server type to SMTP. Now, in the authentication type drop-down box, what you select here will largely depend on what type of mail server you're using. If it's Exchange, you're going to leave the default here at Windows Authentication. But if you're using another third-party mail server, then you have clear text and anonymous options as well. Alright, for the location field down here, we'll need to enter in the fully qualified domain name of our mail server. So in my case, that's going to be crmexchange.crmlab.com. And finally here, for the access credentials, we're going to leave the default at the local system account, but you can choose another account if you like. Alright, we'll click on OK. And now that we have our outgoing profile created, we'll need to create an incoming profile. So we'll click on the New button again. This time we'll call the profile incoming email, and we'll leave the direction at incoming. Now for our email server type, we'll also leave that at Exchange, but do note that you can use a POP3 mailbox here as well, and we'll talk more about that in a later video. Now again, we're going to leave the default here at Windows Authentication since we're using an Exchange server, and then down here we'll need to enter in the location for our Exchange server, which will be HTTP CRM Exchange in my case, if I can spell it correctly. Although I will point out that in a production environment, you'll normally use HTTPS here since you'll want to utilize a secure connection. However, since I don't have a third-party certificate for my lab here, I'm going to stick with the regular old HTTP. Now for our access credentials, here I'm going to change this from local system account to other specified. And then we'll need to enter in the username and password for the mailbox that we want to use. Now, since this might confuse some people, the difference here between user specified and other specified is that when we choose other specified, like I did just here a moment ago, then it allows me as the administrator to provide the username and password for this mailbox. And that's perfectly fine since I'm the one who's setting it up specifically for use as a customer-facing mailbox. However, you might have situations where you want a regular user's mailbox to be configured to use the email router, in which case they're going to want to provide their own credentials. Now in that situation, we'd choose user specified, and then in CRM, we'll need that user to configure CRM with their mailbox credentials. Okay, well I've just logged on to another machine here using Bob's account that we've been using in other videos, and we're here in CRM. So from here, we'll come over to the left and we'll click on Personalize Workplace, followed by the Email tab. And we'll need to check this box to allow the email router to use my credentials to send and receive emails. And then we'll need to enter in the username and password for this user. Now, obviously, in my case, I won't need to do this because I'm going to configure everything myself. But for your regular users or other accounts that you aren't in charge of that might need this functionality of the email router, then you'll need to come in here for their accounts and configure it in this way. Alright, well I've switched back to our email router configuration wizard, so we'll enter in the username and password for an account that we'll create in a moment. So I'm going to call this account crmlab/support, and we'll enter in a password there, and we'll click on OK. Now next we're going to click on the Deployments tab, and then we'll click New to create a new deployment. Now from here we'll need to specify where our CRM server is and what profiles we'll be using for our email. So at the top here we're going to leave the default deployment at My Company. Now for our CRM server itself, it's going to be HTTP followed by your CRM server name, which in my case is simply CRM server, and then followed by the organization name. And this will be whatever you called your organization when you set up CRM, and it's probably going to be your company name. So my correct server details here would be HTTP CRM server/Winstructor. And do note that the organization name, in my case here, Winstructor, is case sensitive. So if I was to use a lowercase w here instead of an uppercase W, then this will fail. So make sure that you not only spell the organization name correctly, but you type it here in the correct case as well. Now we're going to use the local system account again, and for our incoming and outgoing configuration profiles, we're going to select our incoming email and outgoing email profiles that we just created a moment ago. All right, we'll click on OK. And then we're going to select the final tab up here, Users, Queues, and Forward Mailboxes. And now we'll click on the Load Data button. So if you don't see two new tabs appear, then you've configured your earlier settings incorrectly. All right, now you will notice that our two tabs here are currently blank. And the reason why they're blank is that we don't have any CRM users that are configured to use our email router. Remember that by default, users in CRM are configured to use CRM for Outlook. All right, so let's go and set up a new mailbox for our support queries, and we'll configure it for CRM. So I'm going to go to my Exchange Management Console, and we'll go to our recipient configuration mailbox area here in Exchange 2007. And over here on the right, we're going to create a new mailbox. And this will start up the new mailbox wizard where we'll be creating a user mailbox. So we'll leave the default here. We'll click Next. Now, obviously in your company, you'll of course already have created your contact email addresses and forms listed on your website and such. But since we're creating it from scratch here, I'm going to leave the default here at a new user. We'll click Next. All right, well, we need to give our new user a name. So I'm going to call this guy Tech Support, and we're going to give it a UPN of just support@crmlab.com, and we'll enter in a password for that account, and we'll type it in again just to confirm it. Now we'll click Next. I'll leave these defaults as they are. We'll click Next again, then we'll click New, and then Finish. All right, and there's our new mailbox. All right, now what we'll do is we'll go and open up Internet Explorer, and we'll navigate to our CRM server. Now we'll come down here, we'll click on Settings, and then Users, and we'll choose to create a new user. And this new user will be using the domain name of crmlab/support, and we'll hit Tab, and that's going to fill in these other required fields here for us. Now down the bottom here, and this is the important part, we'll need to change our email access configuration type from CRM for Outlook to the email router, at least for our incoming, and then we'll click on Save and Close. Okay, now we can minimize Internet Explorer, and we'll also do the same for our Exchange Management Console, and we'll come back here to our Exchange Email Router Configuration Manager, and then we'll click on the Load Data button again. And there we can see our tech support mailbox. So over here on the right, we'll click on the Test Access button, and we can see that our test has succeeded. So we can click Close. But by the way, if you are getting any errors here, just make sure that you have logged on with this account at least once, since it does seem to require a profile to work. So bear that in mind if you are getting errors with this part of the configuration. So now that we're working, we can finally click on Publish, and now we're ready to test our email router. Okay, well I've just switched over to a Windows Vista machine here, and I'm logged on using an administrator account. So in Outlook, we're going to send our support mailbox a bunch of emails just like it would expect to get if that was the mailbox that a support form on our corporate website would direct its mail to. So we're going to come up here to the top, we'll click on New, and we'll send this email to support@crmlab.com. We'll just give this a subject of Test 1, and we'll click Send. Again, we'll click New. Again, we're going to go to Support. We'll call it Test 2, and we'll click Send. We'll do this again. Test 3, and we'll send a couple more. Although for this one here, I'm actually going to choose to track this one in CRM so we can see the difference here. We're up to Test 5. And we'll do one more. Test 6. We'll also track that in CRM, and we'll click Send. Okay, well I've just switched over to our Windows Vista machine and logged on using the support account that we created. So we'll go and fire up Internet Explorer, and we'll navigate to our CRM server. Now from the default activities page here in the middle under this type drop down box, we'll select email. And in here, you'll find all of the emails that were sent to the support mailbox have already been captured inside CRM. So, as you've seen, the email router isn't really a simple thing to set up. It does take a little bit of work, but it's a very cool and useful way of pulling email directly into CRM. Now, the downside is that you will need to configure each mailbox that you want to monitor, so it can take some time to set all this up, especially if you're planning on monitoring a lot of mailboxes, but in the end, as you can see, it's worth it. So we hope you've enjoyed this video and would like to thank you for supporting Winstructor.